On here. Have patience.
Did anybody have yesterday actually off? Nobody in my house. It's not like when the kids were really
MLK
little.
Day. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's a little different now.
Hey y'all, how you doing? Here we are, Hand to Mouth Podcast.
Good morning, Mercy.
Hi Marie.
Good to see you. How was your long weekend?
It's always a long weekend for me because I don't work a regular job anymore. So, so it was a lot of fun. Actually, I judged at the Culinary Fight Club at the Travel and Adventure Show on Saturday and Sunday. Saturday, I got to do it with one of my friends, Scott Koenig, who has a Gringo in Mexico blog.
I saw the pictures. They
Right?
looked a lot of fun.
Oh, my gosh. And then I did it with my ex-podcast co-host on Sunday, Michael Gardner.
Oh, fantastic.
We had the All Forked Up podcast together, which you can still go on that page and even catch the Hand to Mouth podcast from that page.
Right.
We're all friendly, you know. So, I had a lot of fun. I ate some yummy dishes. And I bought a Las Vegas package at the Travel and Adventure Show.
They always get you.
And it is one of those 2-hour timeshare things I have to go to. But the deal was so freaking good, including Beatles Love tickets and everything,
Hey,
right?
there you go.
So, yeah, I had a lot of fun. How about you?
Oh, good. I did nothing. It was fantastic.
What? She's such a liar.
Hey, I went to dinner. I went to Trust, and that was fantastic. I went to Trust
place.
over on Park Boulevard. That was great. It was my first time.
I love
Yeah.
Isn't it good?
It was amazing.
Brad Wise is an amazing chef.
Yeah, I was really, really excited. I had a few good cocktails, too, so that...
Woo-hoo.
I know.
That's right. And then one of her clients, Claudia Sandoval, who won MasterChef Season 6, is now one of the judges on Latin MasterChef, and you had a big viewing party.
We did. That was a lot of fun. We really missed you.
I am such an idiot. I'm like, hey, I've already got my PJs on. I can't come now. But,
well, I don't blame you. Once that happens, all bets are off. You can't.
It's true.
Well, today we have a really great podcast, everybody. We're really excited because, January 1st, recreational marijuana finally got implemented. We voted on it last year, but, things have happened on January 1st. And our guests today are really in the know. And so they're going to clarify kind of what the recreational marijuana laws actually state, because we do have two board members of the San Diego Cannabis Industry Association with us, and it's Kyle Dukes of Dr. Raw Organics and your operational manager at Torrey Holistics.
Yes.
And we have Kim Sims, who is the leading expert, especially here in San Diego, on cannabis law. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for being here, guys.
Now, tell us a little bit about how you got into the industry.
Yeah, should I start?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, great. Yeah, my partner, Megan, we've been together for about 8 years. We happened to meet actually on the coaster train on the way to Los Angeles one day 8 years ago. And so it's been a journey ever since. One of the first trips we took together was down to Rosarito, Mexico. And
my heart.
Yeah, great place. And so we met a couple of guys down there who own dispensaries in San Diego. And Megan is a very talented baker. And bada bing, next thing you know, they showed up at our house in San Diego with garbage bags filled with cannabis trim.
Whoa.
And I'd never
There's not a lot to complain about with that.
Yeah.
Not that visit, right?
And so I thought maybe, they'd had one too many Modelos or something, and they were probably just, bragging. But they were, in fact, they had about 3 dispensaries, and they brought us all the product we needed to basically go ahead and
experiment,
infuse Megan's baked goods. Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome.
And so from there, it happened about 2 or 3 years that went on, and then they shut down. So from there, we spawned off our own collective where we continued to deliver her baked goods to all of these people who'd grown to love it in San Diego.
Right.
And it really took off. It kind of snowballed, and we've basically grown that business, and that's what we've done now is integrated into one of the license holders. So that we can offer recreational now and be in full compliance.
Fantastic.
And so the brand has also grown in addition to that throughout 80 dispensaries all over California.
Wow, it's quite large.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, there's certainly a lot larger companies, but there's a lot smaller ones too. So I think it's a great opportunity to sort of be nimble in the very...
Sounds like 80 dispensaries is quite the distribution nightmare, actually.
It is, yeah.
Okay, we'll get into a little more of that,
so
too,
when when it gets larger, it gets very complex.
I can imagine. And Kim, how did you get into this business?
I think that my story isn't quite as fun or colorful as Kyle's, which I don't think I've ever asked you how you got into the industry or how you and Megan met.
So you just learned something.
I just learned that, yeah. So, well, when I graduated law school and I was studying for the bar, I was living in a beautiful home up in Encinitas, and I had a roommate at the time who was like very much your absolute typical stoner, Reiki healer, crystal lover, and we struck a really quick and fast friendship, and we would oftentimes debate what the cannabis laws were in California, and I had actually never paid attention before in law school. Maybe I'd noticed that there was a dispensary around, but it was not on my radar
obvious.
at all.
Right.
And so as we started to talk about the laws, I started to read them a little bit more, and then it's sort of like when you put on glasses for the first time and everything comes into sharp focus, and I was like, there are dispensaries everywhere. And so it sort of just was a right time, right place where I realized that the interplay of the politics and the law and the social justice issues, my desire to be a non-traditional lawyer, whatever that meant, I wasn't totally sure, but I knew I wasn't going to put on a suit and tie. I knew that for sure. It kind of all just came into really sharp focus, and one client turned into 2, into 3, into 4, and
Wow.
I realized it was also an incredibly underserved market as well. At that time, there was only one other attorney in all of San Diego that was even willing to discuss what you needed to do in the cannabis industry. And I was lucky enough that he needed a little bit of help at the time as well. So it really was a little bit of fortune, good luck, and fortune without question, good timing, and sort of seizing an opportunity, knowing that this was all sort of meant to be. So recognizing the opportunity as well.
Right. So were you representing dispensaries?
My first client was actually some landowners up in Mendocino, and they wanted to know if they could grow and how much they could grow and what the rules and regulations were. And then, let's see, from there, some of their friends started to approach me. And then it just sort of, again, evolved over time into anyone who wanted to touch the plant in some way. We didn't really have license types the way we do now to say, like, this person is a cultivator, this person is a manufacturer, and sort of like growers and stores. That was it at that time.
Okay, because my experience growing up and being in Los Angeles, I've been here for 9 years, but obviously there, I didn't have too much trouble getting my card, going to dispensaries. Then I moved down here, and every time I'd like a dispensary, I'd go back, and it was gone. And obviously there's a few people in political power here that I cannot stand, and I don't really want to call them out and stuff, but they're really just determined to not let this happen. Yeah. And it's like, it's legal now. You've got to make ways for this to happen. So do you find that's an impediment at all?
The fact that the dispensaries have been closed? Or?
Yeah, and just the political climate.
Absolutely, yeah. Maybe you can speak more to that.
Sure. Well, cannabis is politics at its very finest, and politics is land use. And so the city of San Diego, actually, oddly enough, is one of the more progressive cities in terms of cannabis regulation.
Really? Wow.
So back in I think it was 2014 was when the city of San Diego passed an ordinance, a land use policy for retail shops, and this was at a time when very few other cities and counties were doing so, and it was sort of on the heels of the California Supreme Court issuing a devastating ruling saying that cities and counties had the absolute right and power to still ban commercial cannabis operations. Right. So for San Diego to do that at a time when almost every other city was making a different choice, again, was pretty progressive. And when you look at the county as a whole, we're the only city that has license types for all of the supply chain, but it hasn't been without a tremendous amount of lobbying and political fortitude and coalition building and plenty of setbacks as well, without question.
So do you feel good about this year that had to pass for San Diego to sort of get into the groove of what they were going to put into place? I know that, we voted for it a long time ago. Like, it right. feels like it was so long ago now. So
yeah, we're on the front end, sort of in the trenches on the front lines, and we hear the feedback directly from the what used to be patients, now we call members or customers. They're not very happy, and the tax increase, people are telling us this is ridiculous.
Right.
And one guy told me yesterday, he got sort of irate. So I talked to him and said, I understand, man, we're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of pages of regulation, and this is causing just chaos at, at the administrative level
Right.
to try and organize all this. And so there's price increases, included in the price of the product.
Right.
There's price increases at the register. And the feedback is, one guy said, forget it. He's just going to
It's
go
not
back
worth
and
it
buy it
anymore.
from his buddy. And
Yeah.
we hear that more every day.
Wow.
So
Wow.
that's the feedback that's coming directly from people.
Wow. Okay.
So, yeah, certainly tourism is going to be a major boost here. But
Right.
No, that's because it doesn't require.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Sorry.
It doesn't require a California resident any longer, right? It doesn't matter if you're an Arizona resident,
Correct.
you're zoning coming out and visiting.
yeah,
Okay.
Oh, I don't
All
think I
right.
even realized that.
For
Yeah.
adult use.
For adult
For
use,
adult use,
21,
yeah.
21 and up.
Oh,
Yeah.
Right.
interesting. Okay. Yeah.
And then, but the medical marijuana card is still valid for 18 and up. Is that correct?
Yep.
There's just so many different pieces.
Yeah.
It's so complicated.
So it's still valid for 18 and up. And I get this question a lot, like, well, why would I still get a doctor's recommendation? And so for many people, like, probably they won't, and that's fine. I wouldn't renew my doctor. I didn't renew my doctor's recommendation. But in San Diego specifically, we have a 5% tax, and that's only for adult use.
Okay.
So that's our local tax, and again, 18 and up. And then there's also different daily limits in terms of how much product a customer can buy, and those daily limits are different for a patient versus 21 and up. So there are still some valid reasons why an individual might renew their doctor's recommendation, but I think most people and conversations I'm having with friends and colleagues is that our sort of general attitude is that it doesn't really make sense to renew that recommendation.
Unless you're a medical patient who truly needs it for the dosing limitations.
Yeah, and there are some a little bit of
Tax savings.
product differings as well.
Right.
in
That's
terms
what I
of-
was going to ask.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's definitely a reason to still get the
card.
The card.
Yeah, we just went through this with multiple point of sale systems, dissecting all of these new tax rates. And I've received conflicting answers from everyone.
Me too.
Yeah,
Me
it's-
too.
and
I'll
so-
research.
I'll break it down. What's the here it is. If you are at the retail end, regardless of whether you're a patient or not, there's a 15% excise tax.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking about, Scott? Oh, but we'll see. Okay. He asks, is it true that MMJ would be taxed at a lower rate than recreational?
So that 15% is for everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then you will have your sales tax. So that's going to vary
Another
from
8.
City to county, but yeah,
Right.
approximately 8%. And then you have to look to your locality. So again, in San Diego, we passed Measure N in November, which is an additional 5%, but that's only for the adult use side. And then there's one further exception to
Now,
that.
what do you mean by the adult use side? That's the
21 and up.
the recreational.
Right. So if you went in as a patient and you were to log into the system, however they do their intake, I'm not sure, then you wouldn't be charged that
Extra
5%,
Okay.
which is the local tax.
Okay.
Then there's still one more caveat to this, which is if you are a medical marijuana patient and you have your state-issued ID card, which I think Kyle has
and
pulled out.
I've never gotten that. I just have the doctor
Yeah.
recommendation.
So this is a card you get in addition to that.
And there's an additional fee just to get that, right?
Yep.
I don't think we're going to be able to see it really close.
Yeah.
up.
But in 5 years of serving patients, I've only seen 3 people be able to produce this card.
Can I see the card, please?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have this card that you guys can't see, but sorry about
Yeah,
that,
I think they can see it.
then you are exempt from
Interesting.
sales tax
As well as the 5%.
as well as the 5%,
It's a good savings.
and you could potentially qualify for free cannabis product based on the retailer. But again, I think
that's
there's some like 8,000 people only in the whole state that have
Yeah.
this card.
Yeah,
so
they're
it's
rare.
So
not,
that's a 13% difference, though, in
worth it.
taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's big.
You want to get that.
you want to get
Yeah,
that.
you hear that, everybody? Yeah.
Yeah.
But a
Definitely.
lot of people don't feel comfortable because you have to go down to the county health department and you're basically, you're registering as a medical marijuana patient. And so a lot of people, even though we have all of our patient privacy laws that protect that, and we've never seen, some sort of like McCarthy era, list based on who has this card, there's on principle a lot of people who don't feel comfortable getting it.
So there's a question then is the recommendation versus the card. I've had people, because I do cannabis dinners, I've had people who say they don't have their doctor recommendation because I think there's some confusion about whether you're put on the list. So if you just get your doctor recommendation, there is no ultimate list that you are on. Then it's only if you
They're not that
through the
organized,
intake.
right?
Yeah. Well, and you have HIPAA privacy laws that are still in place
Yeah, HIPAA.
in terms of the doctor issuing you the
Okay.
recommendation.
Okay. All right. So that wouldn't be an issue for them then.
No, and it is really, we're not just here to discuss marijuana laws. We're discussing it in relation to the food industry
Right.
because Marie has hosted a few of these dinners already.
Right.
I believe one of our friends who's listening right now went to one last night where they actually had, I think, about 5 courses and a great chef cooking. But it wasn't infused. They smoked in between the courses.
Nice.
Right.
And I think you actually went home with a little bit of marijuana too. So that one I'd not heard of before. So the main reason really to have them here was because obviously we're a food industry podcast and we want to talk about it in relation to all of that. You
Nice.
know. So if there's anything you could add to that, just let us know. Because there, and let me say, my caveat is also I've done so much research just before the laws were going into effect, and then after January 1st, I cannot believe how many different things I'm hearing. And it just seems like even the people involved in the industry are still a little confused.
Oh yeah.
Maybe a lot confused,
Very.
as you're saying, oh, yeah. So, I was like, wait, this one said that you need a card. This one said you don't. Huh? What's going on?
Yeah.
And where would be a great definitive source to
Read the
Read all
500
that.
pages.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, when in doubt, go to the regs, go to statute. So SB 94, Senate Bill 94, is the statutory authority for the Medical and Adult Use of Cannabis Regulation and Safety Act, MAUCRSA. But there's still a lot that we're trying to figure out because even though it's an industry that's been around for generations and generations, in some ways, this is sort of like our reset button,
Right.
and we're just at the beginning. And so there's a lot for all of us to learn, and you have so many different agencies that are involved. One of the things that's super frustrating to me is you can ask the same question to the different agencies,
Yeah.
and they're giving different responses.
Yeah.
So
Right,
conflicting
see?
information.
We're still
really
getting that.
frustrating.
So, and let me just correct Scott, who's outing himself. And it's so funny. There's still this thing in my head of secrecy, and we don't need to do that anymore. Scott was at this dinner last night, and he said it was infused, and they smoked in between. But he also had a question for you guys. He said, do you feel that the high taxation will keep the black market in business to compete?
Hi, Scott. Yeah, of course.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. It will flourish. I mean, you're telling these cowboys that have been doing this for 30 years to stop.
Yeah.
They were doing it before when the penalties were harsher. Why will they stop now? The
Right.
penalties are less,
And the taxation
And
issue is going to be a big deal for a lot of people.
They will flourish because of that.
And
Yeah.
I think though that what I will say is that the regulators are aware of that, and it's an ongoing conversation about potentially lowering that 15% to 10%. But unfortunately, there's this. It's tough because it's like we've been an industry that's been fighting for recognition and for regulation and for respect. But then, right, the flip side of that is that you're going to be regulated. And
Right.
so I find that it's this sort of, like war between capitalism and freedom to just grow your plant. And so
Right.
it's, but yes, I think that the tax rates that we're looking at, also we need to hold our cities more accountable. San Diego's 5% actually isn't terrible when you look at some of the other cities. At some of our desert cities, they're taxing operators like $25 a square foot.
Oh, wow.
On there,
Wow.
it's crazy.
Do you know anything about what the local tax is, for instance, in the Los Angeles or San Francisco areas that give us kind of an
I think
idea as to
LA is like 6%.
I don't
I
know.
think,
Okay.
and then San Francisco, I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but I could certainly look it up and get back to the viewers.
I was just wondering where we sit in kind of the larger cities.
Yeah,
as
I think
opposed to-
San Diego has a pretty conservative rate.
Reasonable.
It's very
Okay.
reasonable.
Now, so there are dinners all over town, and like Mercy was saying, there's a lot of secrecy around them. So my dinners, for instance, were built out one particular way. I have a very strict regiment. When I did them, I absolutely double and triple checked to make sure everybody had a medical marijuana recommendation. No alcohol, because that for me was just I was more afraid of the ABC than anything else. Like
Totally.
those laws are established. We understand where those
Yeah.
are at, right? And now with recreational, I get these calls all the time, saying that, oh, it's a free for all. You don't have to do that anymore, right? Well, I am so confused by the law where I keep on the side of where I've always been, where, okay, you've got to have a doctor's recommendation letter, and, we'll keep it at that. Jeff Sessions came out and said that he was going to pretty much just blow us all out of the water.
Jeff
So, of course, that
Sessions.
scares the heck out of me because this is not my livelihood. I do it because of the chef friends who want to use this as an ingredient.
Right.
So are those things that are going to change eventually? Is there a special license now that is in place? Because you said that we have a lot of different types of licensing. So what is going to happen with kind of that pop-up underground?
Like a hot debate that we, the legal eagles and the scholars are having. I know there was just a couple long threads on that face. So there's what is it called? It's California
City and Ban Watch. It's a great group that is organized on Facebook, and just a lot of the pioneers are on there, and they're exchanging conversation and sharing. Just an incredible amount of sharing, no greed, just helping each other.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Hey, what do you guys think about this topic? And everyone just collaborates.
Chimes in.
Very
It's
cool.
California City and County Ban Watch.
That's it.
Band, did you say?
Ban,
B-A-N.
B-A-N. And there's pretty much just one rule, which is no profanity. So if you can
Very strict
keep
rule.
keep it professional
clean.
and keep
Yeah.
it clean, you can join the group.
And we'll put that link inside of the comments there for
Yeah,
everybody.
Jacqueline McGowan is the one that's headed that up, and I had a quick second with her, but she's just a very passionate person and has put together a great group on there. So thank
So
you.
it's still
Yes.
complicated.
Well, so
then?
okay, so
What's the answer?
I've digressed. So it's complicated, and let me break down
Like
why.
a Facebook status?
Yeah.
It's
complicated, yeah,
complicated. So we have several different license types: cultivators, retailers, manufacturers, testing. And then you've got another license called the micro business, and then a distributor license. And then when the emergency regulations came out in November of this year, the Bureau of Cannabis Control blessed us with a new license type, which is the event organizer license.
Got it.
However, this license type is very specifically related to more large-scale events that occur either on an agricultural district land or county fair grounds.
So like the Emerald Cups and
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's not really, so it doesn't really contemplate these more private events. So that's one issue people are asking. Oh, well, I want to do a private pairing dinner. Do I need to get the event license type? Well, yes, if you're going to do that at Coachella. But on the second side of that is the fact that in these private events, you are, I would assume, charging for people to attend, which means that you're now engaged in the commercial sale of cannabis. Even though really what you're selling is an experience, part of what you're doing is selling this infused product. And so unfortunately, that exists in a little bit of an abyss right now.
Gray area.
Because you are not allowed to engage in commercial cannabis transactions if you don't have one of these different license types. But at the same time, there isn't really a license type that talks about what you're doing. So what I've been telling people is having people bring their own cannabis and then walk them through the experience, or just do the events out of the kindness of your heart and don't sell tickets.
Right.
Of course, I think
for
these
ours-
events are going to keep going, but
And there are some, and I've seen, everybody has a different format. Our format is we also have the option to opt out, and
In other words, you could eat at the dinner. You don't have to have the infused.
and we have vegetarian options. There's all sorts, and it's a pop-up dinner for the chefs. Now, some of them are infused and some of them are not. Some of them have the option not to use the infused portion, and we don't ever have a an exchange, for instance, for the cannabis. It's product that's been donated, so I've not had to do any of that. But that's mostly
but
just
you're still selling the ticket, right?
Right.
It cost me to come to this dinner. So
And
now
you
you're
can choose
engaged
with
in
or
the
without.
commercial.
Yeah, and
commercial
that's where
component.
I think all of the the conflict has
Right.
been, because there's so many different formats that people have been doing. Like Scott had done one last night. Yes, it was infused, but some people are just simply giving the rolled joint or something in between intermezzos. I know I've seen them all over the country, and it's such a complicated
But if you
piece.
and I think, the way to sort of get around it maybe would be to say, go to your local dispensary and buy these 5 things, bring them, and then we're sort of your guide, right? Like we're your Sherpa through the uninfused dinner. So, or to again, sort of partner with the licensed retailer and say, these are the meals. I don't know how fun that would be, but
we're always partnered with a collective or a dispensary.
But now most of those probably aren't licensed. So again, the issue is, and it's not just the dinners. It's also, for example, like a ganja yoga class, right?
Right.
So unless if you're providing me the cannabis to come do the yoga class, well, now you're also engaged in the sales. But if I bring my own,
you're cannabis friendly.
Then it's different. So really the line in the sand here is like, are you engaged in a commercial cannabis transaction? And I think, look, again, like I said, we're kind of only at the beginning. Right. So I think these are things we can bring up and figure out what kind of license that would be.
And I think that that's going to be a hot topic. They're doing it all over the country. It's not that we're just, alone in it, and people are doing it very successfully. But it is, within the food industry, the chefs are really seeing it as an ingredient as opposed to with flavor profiles and, something fun to play with, as if they just walked into the forest and had something brand new that they get to play, and I think that that's where the confusion happens, and it's such a complex product. And so I know that this is going to be such a heated, hot topic. Now, with the products that you create, now you said you distribute to over 80 different dispensaries throughout all of California, just Southern California?
Correct, yeah.
Now, at what point was the tipping point for you all for where it just got so massive you had to kind of change the workings?
We had this angel from heaven send us an email one day from Sacramento, which to me, you might as well have told me it was China, just so far away, like we're so, like I said, we're in the trenches down here. We're fighting, day in and day out for progress. And then all of a sudden she emails us and says, hey, cool products. I would love to be a brand rep for you. And I actually have relationships with all the dispensaries here in Sacramento. I actually sell them advertising. So I said, okay.
Yeah, right.
That's
Can't
nice.
say no to that.
Yeah, and that was all she said. And bada bing, boom, next thing you know, there's orders flying in from Sacramento.
Good for you.
And so that was a big tipping point when we were like, okay, that's how many miles away, you know? And we're down here and you're there, so lots.
Did you expand the kitchen?
Lots of, yes, yeah. We had to call an electrician. We had to, do all this. So, lots and lots of miles on the car, up and down, up and down.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I have to add, edibles speaks to a kind of a scary thing for me. I mean, when edibles first came out, and even since then, of course, oh my gosh, I have to try it. And, I have my car to go in the dispensary, and then they always want to give you a little edible as a, a little complimentary thing when you go in. And my first edible trip was, for me, horrific. And
a lot of people have that.
Right. And remember, and I've been smoking for over 40 years already, so I'm certainly not a neophyte. Of course, I learned from the kids in the dispensary that marijuana, and I could be wrong, so you'll correct me, that just marijuana is the THC levels are 400% higher than they were 40 years ago. I don't know if that's true. All I know is when I hear the word indica, I get very scared because I know it's very strong. And then I've had a couple of edible experiences that were fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, I just took the right amount, but it still kind of scares me, and I wonder what you have to say about the dosing on all that.
Yeah, it all comes down to milligrams, and I have personally taken and purchased products off the shelf from various edible brands. Won't say any names because I'm not a mudslinger, but just in general, taken them to a lab and tested them. Some had nearly nothing. Some had 25 to 30% higher than what was on the label.
Can you believe that?
And that's scary. That's scary.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I do have a complaint for the edible industry, though.
Yeah.
you make a really damn good product, and then I can't eat the whole
Girl,
damn thing. It's like, give me a
that's
cookie
how I
that is
feel
so
too.
good, and I can't eat the
Yeah.
cookie?
Right.
Seriously.
Yeah.
That's why we buy the little
It is
chocolate
so
squares,
unfair.
and
Oh my
I
God.
take a little
so
part
unfair.
I feel
of
the
it's
same
true.
way.
And when we buy the little chocolate squares, and then we keep part of it in the fridge so we can.
Does anybody remember Girl Scout cookies? I could plow through a whole
Yeah.
box in one sitting.
I've always thought the same thing. I'm like, who wants to eat like an eighth of this
I know.
delicious brownie?
Right.
No,
Yeah.
don't make it so darn good, and
Yeah.
then expect me not to want the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's just torturous.
So when you have a cookie like that, are you dosing it very low?
Yeah, that's what was interesting to me because before, the garbage bags of weed showed up on our doorstep, I'd never used I think I tried it once in high school and I didn't really understand it or like it. And so to me, I personally thought when we were designing these products, I thought, okay, whoa, this stuff is really strong. We need to make these low dose.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did. All of our edibles in the beginning were 100 milligrams max. And,
For a single piece? See, that's
One-
still with
yeah,
Right, right.
one and,
Whoa.
yeah.
I think 25 milligrams. That's it. That's all I can handle
Yeah.
all the time.
I'm like 7.
I know. I was like, under 10 for a cookie, and then I can eat 10 cookies if I want.
But you know what? The regulations take care of a lot of this.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
changing
Okay.
that.
Yeah, and so for all the frustrating parts about this new regulated system, there are some really good and important parts, which is that then now there are requirements for testing, and so which to me, like, people have heard me say this, and I'll never stop saying it. I think it's insane that it wasn't until January 1st that there was a legal requirement that we test the product that we're putting into our body
Yeah.
or onto our skin,
Okay.
that we're giving patients, that we're sometimes even giving children
Yeah.
with very severe medical conditions. So now we have requirements for testing, but the dosage requirement. There's also dosage and scored and delineated servings that have to be within your packaging. So
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And it's a max of 150?
it's a max of 100, actually,
100,
in
okay.
10 milligram serving.
Okay.
Although a controversial topic, because a lot of people feel that there should be a differentiation for medical versus adult use, and that for medical products there should be a higher limit, because again, so like I said, I take 7, right? So that 7, maybe 10
Right.
is my max, but I am using it in a more recreational fashion, or to help an anxiety attack or something like that. Whereas somebody that is going through chemotherapy and has been taking it for a long period of time, they've now built up a tolerance, and now we're asking them to buy 2 to 3 times more of the product, which is more expensive to begin with, and then saying, "Oh yeah, now here, eat these 8 cookies," which isn't good for people anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
So there needs. I'm hoping that in the coming years we can, as a legislative fix that's going to have to happen to get medical edible requirements to be different than adult use, but you're going to be able to know your serving sizes, and you're not going to be able to get that 500 milligram, 1,000 milligram cookie anymore, or brownie, or whatever it may
Now,
be.
do you think it will take years before we can potentially get to a point where the medical and the recreational have different guidelines?
You know, I think it's going to take a while, because there's so many problems, right? There's so many,
Right. There's so many questions still.
things that need to be
Right.
fixed. And
Yeah.
again, that's a legislative fix, because it's in statute. So what's in SB 94 versus what's in the regs, the agencies can only have so much latitude.
Right.
So the legislature is going to have to fix that. But there are a lot of great groups that are working on these. The California Cannabis Industry Association is one of them. California Growers Association is working on a lot of the cultivation issues. There's a I believe a statewide manufacturing cannabis manufacturing lobbying group as well. So we'll get there.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
going to take a lot of work, is what it sounds
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
I have to actually turn around and ask my co-host a question here.
What's that?
How do your chefs know how much to put in a dish?
Well, so we use only products that are already supposedly lab tested, which concerns me, because you said that some of them are accurate and some of them are not.
Yeah.
So, for instance, the oils will say, 1 milligram per 1 teaspoon of oil, and so they can do the math just like they would in the kitchen. The butter is lab tested in Gustavo, for instance, who made this wonderful dish at the last one. He will know exactly how much to put in the sauce that he's going to dribble over the top. So they do it all mathematically, but that is a requirement that I have. I'm sure there are other dinners that don't have requirements to where they want to try and cap a maximum amount.
Yeah, because I don't want to be blasted by the end of the dinner. I want to have that just what we call that mellow high, you know.
And
so
for me, it's about the chef's dinner. So if someone's going home and they can't remember the dinner, I have failed.
That's true.
Good point.
Right.
You know, so that's not really the goal of what I do. But I have, you know, a format that I had created for, you know, for the chefs, and it has to be that there are, you know, there are limits on everything. For instance, I know one of your clients is Vanessa Corrales from Be Edibles.
Yeah, she's so wonderful.
We use her sugars, and everything is lab tested, and she has all of the, you know, she.
Oh, it's infused sugar.
It's infused sugar. She does this really great thing where she does, what is it, cotton candy. Amazing. But so Vanessa has everything listed, and that's how we'll use it. So they just, you know, just like any other ingredient. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I was curious about that because I'm looking forward to going to one of the meals, but I still have that edible fright in my head.
Yeah, a lot of people have had
that
that experience,
yeah.
and that's why.
The Maureen Dowd. Yeah, I mean, it is scary, but I will say the microdosing is very on trend right now, and a lot of new consumers or longtime consumers that are coming back into the regulated market. They're going to be drawn to the lower dose. And really, it's so important that we have educated bud tenders because so many people are going in with a million questions. And I know that, like, the first time I went into a dispensary, I felt sort of embarrassed because I was like, I'm in the industry, so I should not have these questions. But nonetheless, I was like, well, what's this? And what will this happen? So I would say to consumers, please ask when you go in. Don't feel shy. Don't feel embarrassed. Ask questions, make educated decisions, and the right dispensary is going to create that right customer experience for you.
And I feel, and I call them kids because they are so much younger than me, and I've been doing it so much longer. They do seem very educated. At least they have over the last few years. I mean, I think they're more tolerant of the THC levels than I might be. But they have taught me so much. And I've been doing it longer than they've been alive, so it's pretty interesting.
Well, they want
you
you to have a good experience, so they want you to come back, right?
Yeah, of course, of course. And I don't know how much time we really have to test, but I got to bring up the big old bad feds. Got to bring them up because obviously still illegal federally, and are they going to go for the small person here putting together an infused dinner? Are they going to really
today?
Well, I think about that. I think about, we do advertise all over social media. The meal's coming up. She wants people to, she wants to sell it out. Are they looking at that stuff? Do we have to worry about that?
Well, I'm a lawyer, so I have to say yes.
Always keep it in the back of your head is what you're saying.
Yeah, but I think you've got 29 states now that have some form of
I didn't know that
legalized medical and or adult use.
Well, when are they going to give it up already? The feds, come on.
I think definitely it has a chilling effect. But I think the practical implications that we're going to see from Sessions' latest, move are some of the more traditional investors. I think that we're starting to really feel comfortable are now backing away. And some of the property owners as well that we're starting to feel a little bit more comfortable might not anymore. And I think, unfortunately, too, it has a chilling effect on people seeking legal counsel, and also some of the other firms and professional service providers that were starting to feel comfortable offering advice and counsel. And again, not just attorneys, but tax and
They're
real
kind
estate.
Of on hold now.
They are maybe going to pull back, and I think that that's unfortunate because again we continue to be underserved. But as a practical implication, there's an amendment, the Rohrabacher-Blumenauer amendment, which needs to be renewed if we don't have a shutdown on Friday. And so call your representatives, and that's the Congress version, and the Senate version is the Leahy amendment, which basically defunds federal interference in state-compliant marijuana businesses and programs. So it's so important that we call our representatives and let them know that we support that.
Yeah, please.
And we'll put that in the comments.
Rohrabacher, unfortunately, right now only offers protections to get from medical. medical businesses. So we need to also not only urge them to renew it. It's basically a line item in the federal appropriation spending bill, but to update it to also include protections for adult use cannabis programs.
Got it.
Oh God, we could do another whole show. I think I just on federal, but we're at the end
Yeah.
of our time here now. Unless you want to
I
ask.
have one additional
You're
question
allowed,
for you,
sure.
Kyle.
Yeah.
Now, I know you're a little bit larger of a company. Now, with the new legislation, do you feel like is it prohibitive? Is it cost prohibitive for this artisan sort of baker grower, company to come up because of all of the new legislation? Are you feeling that it's going to be a lot more complicated?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we were just discussing before we started here. Was companies that are making smaller revenues can't bear the cost of compliance and licensing. It's just not realistic. And when you factor in the incredible amount of risk, then it's really not worth it, because you could lose everything and slip and fall on a moment's notice under one of these compliance issues. So a lot of companies like ours are looking for white labeling opportunities where you'll come under an umbrella company who holds a master license, and then they produce brands under their
Because I know that was one of the concerns prior to us voting last year was, okay, now this is going to take all the smaller guys out of the business, and it's just going to be these mass corporations coming into California.
It's happening, yeah.
We were worried about
So
that.
it is
Yeah,
happening.
definitely.
Yeah, there's tons of Colorado brands that have just moved right on over, and they're fully funded, and they've been operating for years. So it's going to be very difficult. But if you have traction, if you have proof of viability, then you're highly attractive to these people because you've already taken off
And created.
and you just need more.
Right.
And did you have to redo some of your your packaging to be more compliant and redo molds and things like that to comply with the servings?
That's the thing. To pick up kind of where I left off earlier when I was describing in the beginning, we initially did 100 milligrams maximum because to me personally that was a lot.
Right.
And then the first feedback we got from all the dispensaries that we contacted, they said, "Is this the strongest thing you have?" And I thought, what the heck? So anyway, we listened and collected feedback, and then we launched a 500 milligram red velvet brownie. I thought, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
But
All of a sudden, bestseller.
Really?
And
I know. How much do you take of the brownie?
People eat the whole thing.
Exactly.
People eat the whole
but
thing.
you're-
but
Oh my
no, but no
God.
dosage shaming, right? Like people.
No,
I just can't believe that
That's
they can
funny.
handle it.
Yeah.
Like, I can't even.
Yeah.
I would be
But if you're a
passed out for
long-time
4
consumer,
weeks if I did.
or you have
500.
chronic pain,
Yeah.
you might need that.
Right.
You really might.
Yeah.
And so so no dosage shaming here.
I am in awe of anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
But I
Yeah.
know a lot of people who truly that's what they need. And so there is there's a need in the market for that.
Obviously.
And a lot of brands have built their entire product line on products like that who are now out in the cold. They have to
So-
rebrand their entire product line.
Are you just going to be flipping backwards and doing like a time warp and going back to your original 100 then? Is that what
Exactly,
I'm-
yeah. So I was right 4 years ago, but unfortunately that wasn't the time. I missed the
Right.
timing.
There you
So, but yeah, basically we are shifting away from the baked goods because that has a lot of regulatory issues around it. So we've have 2 of our best-selling edibles since the brownie have been our candy hearts.
I was going to ask you about those.
Yeah.
Is that a gummy kind of thing?
I brought you all samples of them, so I have some for after the show.
Uninfused samples, right?
That's
Correct.
right.
Yeah.
Darn.
Yeah. Exactly.
But
So,
okay, so you said around baked goods. So there's a difference now then that's around the baked goods versus
hard
the
candy or
candies.
chocolate or
Yeah. There's a lot of prohibited products now.
Oh,
I didn't know that.
I didn't
Yeah,
either.
yes. So if it's not
What?
basically shelf stable, and I think one of the
Oh,
beautiful parts about the Dr. Raw product, if I could just
Yeah.
speak about them, is that they use a lot of raw and organic and vegan ingredients, and so
Our
that-
producer's
you know,
happy.
so that means
Vegan Danielle there.
Danielle
Yes.
over there.
but that
very
means it's
happy.
got to go in the fridge, right?
Yeah.
And so anything that has to be refrigerated basically is no longer allowed. There's a couple little
wow.
exceptions, which again is super unfortunate because that means that like it's edibles that are pumped full of preservatives.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
so it's not that there's a separate licensing for it. It's entirely prohibited.
There's a whole list of prohibited products.
Yeah.
I'm blown away.
And some of them make sense, like
Okay.
cannabis and cannabis infused alcohol, but that makes sense.
Right. I'm
and
scared of that
it's a
combo
safety
Yeah.
issue. Really.
altogether.
Yeah, I am too.
I don't need both
But
together now.
It's a safety issue, but it is
Yeah.
unfortunately it impacts a lot of the products that I think were the most beautiful that Dr. Raw makes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's very depressing for people who've built a whole brand based on
Right.
high potency edibles,
Wow, yeah.
and then it's swept out from under them, and they've got to pivot.
Now everybody's got to go back to making their own.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people
Making
are
their
telling
own
us
brownies,
Yeah.
right?
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of people have told us that. Well, can I buy trim? Because I'll just make it myself. I
Right.
said that'd be great.
Oh,
Sure.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then you could be like the new, like the plated of cannabis, right? You sell, they go and they buy the trim, and
And you
then you sell them the
that's right.
recipe
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
how-to.
There you go.
Possible. So
Now, Kyle, what is coming up in your world that people can look forward to?
yeah, we are going to be launching some new products,
Mhm.
different formulations. We're looking at a couple opportunities here, waiting on one of them to be approved, but we're looking at a couple licensing opportunities, so we'll be able to basically pick back up. Right now we're on pause while we wait for the licensing.
Oh, okay.
And the great news is that we've got two incredible opportunities. We're just waiting for the paperwork, and we'll be back up, and you'll see the new products come online.
So look for
Fantastic.
Dr. Raw's
What's the website?
Organics.
drraworganics.com.
All
You
right,
can just
perfect.
Google that, yeah.
All right, perfect. And Kimberly, what do you think that we should all be paying attention to in the next months?
Oh my gosh. Well, so much. I mean, first, making sure that look, I know that there's a cost increase for products when you go to a licensed dispensary, but these are going to be safer products.
Right.
So, and we should be doing our best to support the businesses that have taken the steps, right? Some of the
Invested so
invested.
much.
Yeah. In San Diego, we don't necessarily have these big conglomerate companies. These are our friends. These are our colleagues that have
Right.
been in the trenches with us. So I think paying attention to that. Pay attention to see if Rohrbach or Blumenauer gets renewed. And then I think just sort of like a consumer tip is stock up, because there's a brand new supply chain that's
Yeah.
in place, and
What's
as
not
a-
in place.
well, or not in place. Yeah, that's a better way to look at it.
Yeah.
So everything has to be tested now, but we only have, as of yesterday evening, I looked, 19 licensed testing facilities in the state of California.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Are
you're
any of them
gonna-
in San Diego?
Not a licensed one.
Not a licensed one.
Wow.
Although I'm
Okay.
sure we have ones. I'm sure they will be.
Yeah.
So some of the stores are allowed to sell through certain inventory that they had prior to Jan 1.
Got
So
it.
basically, like, if you've got that favorite product, go buy it.
Mhm. Get it while you can.
Get it
Yeah.
while you
Yeah.
can,
It's
and
gonna
then
They
disappear
can't
any
produce
day.
anymore.
yeah, if it
Right.
isn't already,
Yeah.
disappeared, and then just especially for patients, making sure that you, to the extent that you can afford it, stock up, because we're gonna have a bottleneck here in the supply chain really soon.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna happen, and we've seen it in every other state. So
It's time.
yeah,
Yeah.
bye.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Now, before we say goodbye, what resource can our listeners go to kind of get the real deal information that you feel is the least conflicting?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
should they be paying attention to online?
Well, again, I say go right to the code.
Yeah.
My website has a really good Q&A, and
Okay.
we're starting a blog section as
Oh,
well.
please tell us what it
Perfect.
is.
So yeah, it's www.simslaw.com.
Sim with one M, two M's.
2 M's, SIMMS.
And we'll
Okay.
put that in the links for you
yeah,
all too.
and then I write a monthly article in Culture. I think Culture Magazine has some really good
Yeah,
content.
those are great.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Really, so much incredible info today. Thank you, guys. We could obviously do another whole hour on
Yeah.
I have
We'll
so many
come
more
back if
questions,
you have
so
us.
We'll have, to
Okay.
have you,
Perfect.
we'll have to have you back as things start to settle in a
Yeah,
bit more
a
over the
lot of
next
question
year.
marks right
we may
now.
have to
Yeah.
have like a quarterly meetup
Yeah.
I'm
because
in.
I'm sure within a quarter a
Wait,
whole lot can change.
don't we call it a safety meeting?
that's that's
Sorry,
what it is.
I resist.
Yeah. Thanks for having
Yeah,
us.
Thank
Yes,
you so much
thank
for
you, guys.
coming. Thanks everybody for
Thank
joining
you.
us today, and we'll talk to you all in a couple weeks.
Yes, we will. Bye, guys.
Bye.
That's it for this week's show. Remember to follow us on our Facebook page and Instagram stories to keep up with Hand to Mouth between shows. Use hashtag HandToMouthShow to share what deliciousness you're up to, and maybe you'll be our post of the week.
And a big thank you to the folks at Specialty Produce Network for producing our show from their studio in San Diego, California. Until next time, thanks for listening to Hand to Mouth.